Good day. My name's Graham, and I've been taking an interest, as many other people have, in megaliths and the megastructures, these fascinating, massive stone structures that are all over the world, all with similar type of architecture. Well, some are different. There are some different, but there's a similarity in the fact that they were massively heavy, and someone had to move them. Now, how they moved them is a mystery. I was in the building game long enough as a mason and other things to know that lifting heavy blocks, well, we cannot lift what's in Baalbek. It's impossible right at the moment. So you've got to ask, what is this evidence of? And it's evidence of giants. Giants built the megaliths, the ones that were built before the cataclysm. Let's not get into what caused a cataclysm. Let's just, there was a cataclysm. It doesn't matter what caused it, there was a cataclysm. Before then, there was a race of giants around the world. It was these people who built the walls in Teotihuacan, what it's called, and what the Incas found and took over. It was amazingly strange shaped blocks, look like they melted into place, which I think they did. Only way to do that around Cusco is to somehow mold those blocks. But also, and everywhere. But Baalbek is another one, another example of a mega structure. We know the Romans didn't build it. It's just out of all proportion to what anything Rome did. So, where's the evidence of giants? This is what we know. Smithsonian took away skeletons. We know that's a fact, right? But they weren't giants. They were very large people, but they weren't actually giants as such. Now, what I'm going to suggest is it's about evolution, because when there was bigger animals, megafauna, possibly there were mega humans or mega men, mega women. Because it all sort of goes together, and the big animals, big humans. And that seems to be when animals got smaller and humans have got smaller, all told. Now, it doesn't mean that when there were these giants, there weren't smaller humans around. It just happens to be there were a race of giants all over the world. Or they moved all over the world. And they sort of ruled the world. There were titans, whatever you want to call them. And what happened at the cataclysm is most of them got wiped out. The larger ones were wiped out because it just obliterated the whole place. And they lived around the coast and wherever, and they got wiped out. Through one reason or another. Now, the evidence is in the Bible. I've just started reading the Bible out of someone gave me one. I'm glad to give me a Bible to read at the later stage of my life. Not that it's that late, but later stage of my life now, because I have a reasonable understanding of history. In the Bible, in Deuteronomy and Joshua, it mentions giants a few times. It says Gog was a giant, 9 cubits long. It said his bed was 9 cubits long. I don't know what that is, but it's a very large person. And there were remnants of giants. And the Israelites, they went and smote them and destroyed them, whatever, because there was very few left. The thing about that is, an interesting thing about giants and why they got wiped out. And then a remnant, the people that were left after cataclysm were small people, were in the forests or in the hills or somewhere in small enclaves. Because larger animals or larger things don't breed as often as small things. I don't know what the gestation period for a giant is, but I know that, if you've got whales and elephants, anything large, gestation, the time, they have fewer children, they have fewer babies. It stands to reason that there weren't many giants. There would have been a race of giants, but there may not have been many of them, just a race of giants. There may have been only a few thousand of them. But they rule the world. The evidence is in all the megastructure, from Japan to Greece to Turkey to the Americas to everywhere you look. that are megastructures. People, no architect, archaeologist, or anyone can come up with an answer with that makes any sense. That is a clue that archaeology is wrong. That it's saying the things that we know are impossible to do with copper chisels or stone balls. They say no, these people have made these absolutely perfect shapes, these imperfect tools. We know obviously it's bunker. They don't want to admit someone else did this, and I'm suggesting it's in the Bible. It's there. If you read the Bible, James Bible, the authorized James, the first version, and you read it, and it's an interesting thing to read anyway, because historically it's pretty accurate, regardless of the Old Testament's pretty accurate. Maybe the New Testament's less accurate, it's more like philosophy and moralizing, but the Old Testament's a pretty accurate record by the looks of it. Whether some of it's mythology or some of it's embellished or whatever, but nonetheless, it's a reasonably accurate document. And it's nothing to do with belief in anything, but it looks like it's pretty authentic in the way it's written. People observed things and they told the tale. Now, if you look at Deuteronomy, it mentions Zim and Mims, who were very tall, and Gog, who was very tall, remnants of giants. So therefore there were giants. And I'm suggesting these were just very large men. Real giants, the real giants who moved all these big stones and that, they lived before the cataclysm and it wiped them all out. Well, there weren't enough breeding pairs to carry on and replenish their stock that had all been obliterated during the cataclysm. But I think there's a story hidden, and I think the story that's missing before the cataclysm. Let's say they say before the flood. No, let's say before the cataclysm. It's not a pre-flood; it's a pre-cataclysmic world that we have only evidence about, very little knowledge about. But the clues are there in the Bible about giants. So you have to take it as pretty authentic that there were giants. But if you look at it as an evolutionist point of view, and look at the stage of development, all the megafauna got wiped out, then chances are the giants got wiped out with a megafauna. And we don't know how old all these structures are. To estimate, from a punker, how old that is, well, that's nigh on impossible. It's nigh on impossible to age many of these buildings. So to age them is very, very difficult indeed. And that's the problem. But there's my suggestion, is that there were giants, and they built these megastructures, particularly Baalbek, and everything else. There were giants built them. And they had special techniques, they had giant brains, certainly. And so it's obvious we've got a giant brain. Maybe they can work things out in ways we can't even begin to imagine. There were titans on Earth. And it's just something we can imagine, talk about, dream about, write stories about. But in the Bible is a clue to it. And in evolution, there's also a clue to it. Larger things are, animals are, the fewer of them they breed. And that's a clue why. Maybe only a few thousand giants. It doesn't take many. It didn't take many to rule. It doesn't take many to rule the world. If you're a giant, it takes very few amongst all the tiny little people around you. And that's, I think, sort of sums it up really. What happened, who built the megaliths? Giants did. Giants. Because try and think for 2 minutes, how do you move those things? How do you move all those large stones, or 1,000 tons, or 500 tons, or 300 tons ropes? Many things in the Peru are impossible. And because they're impossible, you've got to look at other possible from our own perspective. Then you've got to begin to look at it from other perspectives. And when the thing about aliens is, it's one possibility. Yes, maybe giants interact with aliens. We can get to that if you want, but giants lived on world, and they built some of these megastructures. And Baalbek, if you like, with a massive, the size of it, is in scale to the humans who existed in it. Humans build things in scale to themselves, especially as always. Thank you.